While Rocky Moore, Mr. Blue Point, was selling Sherwin-Williams paint, another Blue Point resident was putting Bayport on the map. Jim Davis, a local house mover, bought a big tract of land that was to become later known as the Bayport Aerodrome.
Brakes in contact.
Brakes in contact.
Well, the original airfield was my father, who was Kurt Davis. He took this land from his father, who used to grow corn here. And my father got into flying in the early 40s, and he decided he wanted his own strip close to home. So that's how it started. Well, when we started out, he called it Davis Field, and he named it after himself, of course, and he had a lot of work ahead of him.
In the early days of aviation, most airports were called aerodromes, and the idea was that they were just wide open grass spaces, and the aerodrome was either circular in nature or square.
It was in the early 40s that we started building the airfield and so on, and it made it a little bit easier because there was corn here before for the central strip. But my brother and I used to, this is where we learned how to drive and so on, because we had an old 39 Chevrolet that we'd go around and pick up all the stumps and when they were clearing the land and bring them down and throw them in the big hole in the back here, and it was, we had a good time.
Back before the war, was at some point sold to the Edwards family, but they had 3 hangars down at the other end of the field, which were actually, we have 1 runway now, but they actually were in the center of 2 cross runways. The story is that all 3 hangars came from Roosevelt Field. The local folklore is that actually one of the hangars that was here actually housed the Spirit of St. Louis. There is no verification of that whatsoever, but it's a great local story.
Well, in the beginning, we had the building behind me, was the first hangar that was put up. And then, you know, as the years went on, probably a couple of years later, then we built 2 or 3, not me really, but my father built 2 or 3 other buildings over here, one for himself, and one for Chilo Bianchi, and the other one, I guess, was for anybody who wanted to keep their plane here.
If you've seen our logo, you'll see a tower that's on the logo. That's actually I believe it was an observation tower that was down on Fire Island. It was brought here by and I don't know whether it was the Davis family, the Edwards family that brought it over here, but that was actually the pseudo control tower, if you want to call it, being that we didn't have it wasn't a controlled field, but they kind of was the point of going up and watching the airplanes.
And then we put up a Coast Guard tower that we brought over from Fire Island. It was a control tower we put up by the 3 buildings, which isn't here anymore, of course, and it was becoming quite an airfield.
The earliest airplane we have here is a replica of a 1911 Blériot.
It was a French design. It was the first airplane to fly across the English Channel. This was made, however, here in the United States. It's of particular interest because it actually flew the first airmail in the United States. What is really very interesting about it, it went all the way from Garden City to Mineola. Actually, the man took off, and rather than landing, he dropped a sack of mail out of the airplane.
We do have some famous old planes here. One was a Curtiss Robin that established at one time an endurance record of a number of days in the air. They actually refueled and lubricated the engine while it was in flight. It stayed up at quite a few days, and the fellows were flying it, and they were eating, doing what they had to do in the air for that number of days. That plane is still here.
They refueled this airplane by driving down the highway, and a platform was built onto the side of the airplane. The pilot would fly the airplane, and his mechanic would go out on the platform, lower down a rope, hoist up gas cans as they were flying down the highway, and refuel the airplane in flight, and that's how they established this endurance record.
And about 1946, I guess it was, somewhere around in there, they had this big party up here, and they called it a donkey roast, and they had a lot of pilots flying around doing, you know, exhibitions, and they had, it was a huge crowd here. And one plane, they were playing the part where somebody ran out and jumped in the plane, was stealing the plane like, and he took off, but unfortunately he crashed. He didn't get hurt, but he survived, but it was quite amusing for the whole crowd anyway.
As far as this aerodrome, everything you see, all the flights you see, the flying and everything, it's all volunteer.
The purpose of the society is to further interest in aviation amongst the younger people. We find that a lot of the youngsters don't know very much about our early history or the early history of airplanes in general. So we want to try and foster that and gather their interest, because we're getting to be a bunch of old guys here. We want somebody to follow us, and we want to keep the old airplanes, the old antique airplanes flying.
Well, to build this field today would probably take you about 10 years to get permits, and if you could ever get them, and you'd probably die before you ever got anything done. Compared to years ago, when if you owned the land, you could almost do whatever you wanted. You know, it was a cornfield, you turn it into an airfield, which was very nice, but I wouldn't want to try it today.
It's a real gem, it's a real jewel, and it's a real asset, we believe, to the town of Bayport. And we would like to keep it that way.